Hey, let's bring it right now. Can we call you a legend? TV legend?
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, he's TV legend.
All right, TV
and
legend.
co-director and executive producer of the new documentary, Body of War. And they put in the prompter, as well as TV legend.
Well,
there you go, Phil Donahue.
Because he is.
Just in case there's any question we say to him. Phil, thank you so much for
If it's on the teleprompter, it must be true.
It must be
You
true.
learned that after your years in
Yes, I
television,
did.
right?
Exactly.
Yes, I did.
So a couple days ago, we had a Nobel Prize-winning economist talking about the costs of this
That was
war.
something.
And he talked about the long-term costs because of the new technology we have, the body armor. He said in past wars, the ratio of kills to injuries, 2 to 1. They said something like 15 to 1, 20 to 1. So many young men and women coming back so scarred from this war. You actually follow one of those men.
We do, Joe, and it is true. The injuries in this war are especially hideous. We have blind kid, 20-something, and you're blind. Disfigured faces, women, and paralysis, as you see in our film. And, we're talking, well, there are over 50,000 casualties, but as many as 30,000 of these injuries turn the whole family upside down. Thomas Young can't walk, 28 years old, prime of life, saluted and went to war. And, of course, he comes home after all this talk about the troops, the courageous troops.
Support the troops. Right.
Oh, support the troops, the troops. The troops come home and the VA doesn't call them back.
Right.
We have a lot of pretense going on around here. By the way, all those people who support the troops, one of the ways you can support the troops is to supply more troops. We are tapped out. I just heard you say that on this program.
Well, yeah.
How about a draft now, Joe?
The Army is not only broken, but the men and women that are in the Army now are doing 13, 14, 15-month deployments, go over there, they come back, then they go back over there. You're exactly right. If we're going to continue this for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we either hire 200,000 more at astronomical cost, or we start a draft. There aren't any good options.
A draft, by the way, a draft that includes the rich.
Right.
Draft the rich. No more of this pretense. Half the people beating the biggest drum for this war would never think of sending their own kids to fight it. So people who are against this war are calling our attention to the pretense that democracy, half of us vote.
Yeah, and the thing is also, and of course I want you to talk more about your documentary, but we've had reports out over the last month or so talking about even the men and women that come back with their bodies intact, whole, have problems returning because of abuse in their families, because the divorce rates are so high, the suicide rates are so high. You've got men and women that haven't seen their children for
several tours of duty.
Yeah, several tours of duty.
And the problem of instability, emotional instability, goes exponentially up as you return a soldier to the combat zone. If you send a young man or woman to a combat zone for the third time, the numbers go up in terms of behavior problems coming home, drinking, violence, lashing out. This is going to rattle around this country for the rest of this century. Yeah. We have to acknowledge that it was a mistake. We think one more death in Iraq is morally indefensible, and we think if we went to the moon, we can get out of Iraq after. Let's get the UK to help us. We don't have to do this alone. I think it's possible. We don't know what's going to happen if we pull out of Iraq, but we do know what's going to happen if we stay.
Right.
We're going to have more and more young Americans die. What are we doing to 30 to 40 a month still? And people are talking about, we're making some progress. I don't see it, and the people in our film, Body of War, don't see it.
Why is it, though, and we talked to Frank Rich about this a couple of days ago, that people want to avert their eyes in this war? Because in Vietnam, you would always see, was it Life magazine that would always have the faces of the dead, and people, even if you supported the war, you had to look into the eyes of the young men, mainly, who were dying in Vietnam and say, okay, is what we're doing worth the cost of all of this? Remember Ted Koppel at the beginning of the war, back when I supported the war, Ted Koppel at the beginning of the war wanted to show the faces of the troops that had been killed, which seems to me to be the least we can do, to look again into those eyes, do a gut check and say, is this morally defensible? But they don't. But we aren't doing that now. We don't want to see it. We'll revert. Why?
Well, the administration, just to add to that, will not let the bodies be seen as they're transported back. This was, I remember, as a correspondent at CBS trying to cover the death of a soldier.
And the whole
we
press,
couldn't get the video.
And the whole press establishment said, "Okay, we won't take that."
Exactly. We went along with it.
Right. This war is not fair to the American troops. And we ought to be brave enough to acknowledge the mistake and not be sending more young people to die for this mistake. This is, I think, unconscionable. How can we keep... And by the way, Thomas Young, who's the subject of our film, makes this point. He's at home. He has a T4 injury, so he's paralyzed from the nipples down. He's watching television at home and he sees Britney Spears all over that screen. And in the crawl, 5 American soldiers were killed yesterday with an IED. The coverage of this war has dropped. I think it's like in the 20 percentile now. It used to be 60s.
Did you see that New York Times? There's a New York Times article where they had the diary. I think it was on a Sunday cover. Had the diary of 5 or 6 soldiers who had died, and one of the guys said it was depressing watching TV covers. He was in Iraq. He said, "Wake up, America! You're talking about Brittany. You're talking about Lindsay. You're talking about all. I'm over here fighting for you."
And they're reading that they're not even at the top of our worry list anymore. Right. You know, second, third, what is it? And media has dropped in its attention to this issue. It's like it's not good for business to be covering this horrible disaster we're in now.
Speaking of not good for business, and I want to ask this in a way that your answer doesn't sound crass, because you certainly are not glad that things have gone badly over the past 5 years. You're not glad for all the suffering that you're not averting your eyes from. But do you feel vindicated? 5 years ago, you said, this is a terrible mistake. Some people believe it cost you your job at this network.
You know, over 4,000 dead Americans, many of whom could do a better talk show, be a better reporter. And Donahue's home saying he's vindicated. I have never said that, and I never will. The pain is too great for this war. Nobody ever got anything for saying, "I told you so." Nothing good ever comes from that. Let's move on now. See if we can't stop calling each other names. I have to include myself. I called Cheney a wimp the other day. And see if we can't reach out rather than lash out.
How do we... I couldn't agree more. Where do we go from here?
I think, first of all, let's summon a coalition of nations. We're the last remaining superpower. We certainly ought to be able to do that. And gradually withdraw. Our presence, it is agreed, is part of the problem. It is true we're not sure what will happen. But how can we possibly send more people to die for this? How would you like to have the 2 uniformed officers coming up your walk now?
Right.
Now, when we are destined to get out of here. And what's going to be different a year from now? How is it going to be different and easier for us to withdraw? This is unconscionable. We can get out. Reagan backed up. Remember the Marine billet? The truck went in there. Reagan pulled out. Nobody said wimp. Nobody said message. By the way, message, we can't send the wrong message. Message means face. We have old men in Washington who are trying to save face. And the people in our film, Body of War, are saying no more young life is worth an old man's face.
Yeah.
Let's honestly say who we are. We're brave enough to acknowledge this terrible error. We want to close the gap with the rest of the world. We want to show them what we can sell. We have so much to sell. We have the best document in history, the United States Constitution. And we backed away from it in this war. We're the patriots. We're saying, honor the First Amendment. Honor the Fourth Amendment. Don't put a person in a cage forever. It's not the American way. Stop this now. Come back to the vision of the framers. Only Congress can declare war, and they didn't do it in this debate. Bodyofwar.com. I'm counting on you, Joe, to come to my film. You too, Mika.
I will.
All right, Willie, we want you all there now.
We won't talk turkey.
That's with the IFC Theater tonight, Manhattan. We open. Oh, my, are we pumped downtown? Yeah, and Boston at Kendall Square, a theater in Boston on Friday.
Bodyofwar.com.
Big week for us. Bodyofwar.com.
Okay, Phil, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you both.
It's great having you here. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
By the way, have you picked the candidate yet?
I have, but I don't want to say because I don't want to make any more enemies than I already have.
Okay.
We're trying to get people to come to this movie.
Okay. We'll wait until after the
title Body of War.
The movie. What's it called again?
It's bodyofwar.com.
Now, my question. I got a question for you, Mika. Because sometimes when I go home, I get on the internet thing. If I want to learn about it, where do I go?
You go to bodyofwar.com.
That's awesome.
But that's after you watch the Torch Relay and
Phil Donahue, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Joe, Mika, thank you, Willie.